Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another episode. Well, actually this will be already the last episode of this campaign with the Soviet Union, as I did manage to condensate within one video basically the whole great Patriotic War. And let's start from the beginning, and as, let's say, the Axis anticipated Operation Barbarossa in April, and this caught me completely by surprise and totally unprepared. I just decided to rush all my garrison units, well, all the units that survived the early onslaught back deep into the Soviet territory, and the idea was to concentrate all the troops of, I think it was the 19th Army, in the province northwest of Kiev. And as, let's say, the Axis spearheads advanced deep into the Ukraine, I realized how my concept of defense in depth simply did not work, and it would have never worked. So I just decided to slowly and progressively relocate all of my divisions into one or two tiles, and hoping that the German armor would have not broken through my thin defensive lines. And at some point, yeah, I just decided to evacuate the bridgehead west of Dnipropetrovsk. Oh my god, I can't say that name. And yeah, I just left, I think, 4 or 5 garrison divisions in the city itself, because I wanted to deny the Germans control of that city. And as my garrison divisions proved to be really horrible in holding the lines, I just pulled all the troops of whatever army was that in the north, and I converted them into tank divisions, because as always I like to have a bunch of motorized, mechanized, armored troops in my army. And since I didn't have enough, let's say, time to train those divisions, actually I think, yeah, this was a very smart, let's say, trick and escamotage from my side, since I would have wasted too much time in training in new divisions. I just took some existing one and I manually converted them into tank divisions. And despite not having invested in the Air Force, I decided to maybe just give my flying boys some opportunity to just try and shoot down some German planes, because yeah, the Axis gained quickly and immediately air superiority over the Ukraine. And despite this, despite the fact that they were bombing to death all my bunkers and fortifications, I mean, despite this, my lines still held, and I was quite happy about that, and I was quite relieved to see that things got bogged down in the winter of 1941. And I must confess, I was really surprised, and I began to appreciate the work that the guys of the Black Eyes did in terms of weather, because I was just playing around with the weather, and I realized that you cannot just do anything when winter comes in. No, it's just impossible to move, impossible to attack, impossible to cross rivers. It's just impossible. One small thing you may have noticed, I decided to put some armor divisions in and around the Kiev defensive belt. You see that small bridgehead west of the Dnieper River around Kiev? Well, keep that in mind, because that is the bridgehead that saved my my campaign. And it took me, I confess, several attempts to let's say, play and try with this, and I came to the conclusion that having some armor in that defensive areas, I mean, combining armor and fortifications, was actually the best way to stop, with which to stop the Axis onslaught. And since Finland, I realized too late, was affected by this negative modifier of neutrality, I found it a bit surprising. I thought that Finland would have joined the Axis, but this happens in the total war mode and not in Black Ice. But anyway, this again allowed me to move basically all of the armies. I think 3 out of 4 armies that were deployed against Finland to be moved along the new line. And instead of selecting, the defensive line as an order, I finally decided to draw the frontline orders for my field marshals. And as soon as the situation improved a little bit, which was, let's say, past the winter crisis, in early May of 1942, I decided to prevent the Axis from launching their offensive by launching an offensive on my own. This is kind of similar to what happened in real life when Timoshenko's southwestern front anticipated the German offensive by 5 days. And, you know, by exploiting the Kiev bridgehead and the fact that I now mobilized 2 full tank armies and 1 army full of motorized divisions, I just decided to launch an offensive westward to, you know, just shrink a little bit the Axis divisions. And as always, motorized troops are, I think, indeed the best that you can use for this kind of maneuvers. And the advantage of deploying those divisions behind a field marshal frontline order is that the infantry armies will just automatically redeploy along the new front line, so you have slightly less micromanagement to take care of. And I don't know if you noticed, but whenever I was launching an offensive, I gradually reduced the amount of troops spearheading the attack, because since the foot-borne infantry is just way too slow to catch up with the armor, to avoid getting my armor being cut off by the Axis counterattacks, I was just slowly redeploying, slowly leaving behind some divisions to just protect the front lines, and removing them along the new front line when the infantry would have arrived to back them up. And let's say with this spearhead westward, I then turned my motorized and mechanized armies southwards. And this, again, I was quite surprised to see that the Axis did not have, as always, not as always, but did not have quite much of reserves behind the front line. Because surprisingly, I think, that was the big surprise. For the first time, I noticed how the Axis did indeed have some reserves, some troops in Romania, troops in Hungary that I was honestly not expecting to find them and to see them there. Still, despite the success of these pockets, the Axis launched a counterattack along the, let's say, north eastern part of the front, and they succeeded in pushing my troops back. There was an ongoing, back and forth along, I think it was in not Silesia, but in the province Galicia. Sorry, in Galicia, around the area of Pskov. No, not Pskov. Lvov. Sorry, Lvov. Oh my God, I'm getting confused now. And And despite this, despite my encirclement, despite having annihilated several more and more of Axis divisions, their numbers simply didn't want to go down. I was really stunned by simply how many divisions the Germans and the Germany's allies did have, and I was really surprised to see that they were constantly trying to counterattack me, and especially from the north, from the Pripyat marshes. And so at this point, my overall strategy was to just perform small pockets to just progressively wipe out, maybe 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 divisions of the enemy at the time. The capitulation of Romania greatly helped in this, because the bulk of the Axis troops around the Carpathian Mountains were all of a sudden cut off. And thanks to the quick redeployment of my armored troops, I made sure that those troops would have gone nowhere. but in the Soviet Gulag, deep into Russia. And I also decided to make good use of my garrison divisions, because even though they turned out to be quite crap, I thought maybe they can just behave like I call them the pillow troops, you know, just to absorb as many enemy offensive and counteroffensive as possible. Even though, as you may have seen, just northwest of Kiev, 2 garrison divisions were routed, and I had to manually intervene to bring them back again to the front line. And with the southern front secure, I decided it was time to bring the war directly into Germany, and especially into eastern Prussia. And because I was like, yeah, sure, I mean, it's only September 1942, the progress was really good. And this time, however, the Germans did not have a proper reserve behind the front line. And once my tank divisions marched across Königsberg, virtually cutting off all of the Axis divisions still deployed in Belarus and in the Baltic states, I thought, okay, with this offensive, the campaign is basically over. And it was not completely over, because I had to wipe out the pocket in the Pripyat marshes, as well as to race northwards to cut off the Axis from every single port and just let the remaining troops starve to death. And this required a lot of micromanagement, as you can see right now, because for whatever reason my infantry armies were surprisingly slow in being redeployed along the new front line, and I had to manually intervene even from the east to just order my infantry divisions to just attack westwards and shrink the enemy pockets into smaller encirclements, and then finally wipe the enemy out. And with the collapse of the Belarus Baltic offensive operation, I would say I could call it like this, I took advantage of the break into the operation due to the extremely bad weather to just improve a bit of the infrastructures, because I really had to, and bring up reinforcements, because again, unexpectedly, the Axis tried to launch a counterattack along the entire front line. And indeed, in some areas they managed to break through, especially in the areas south of Brest-Litovsk and north of Grodno, I think it was, and south of Königsberg. And again, you know, the fact that the AI managed to push me back between Königsberg and Grodno, I think it was, just invited me and invited my motorized troops to just, again, launch a very small pincer operation to trap, I think there were 8 or 10 German divisions in that pocket. And still, the Axis manpower seemed infinite, because I was like, I can't believe how many troops I've already destroyed, how many troops I've already overrun, and they just keep attacking. They keep arriving, they keep coming. I cannot do it. And I was being again pushed back in Romania, in the Carpathians, and despite all my best efforts, I had to redeploy my garrison divisions. There was one province in Romania, I think it was north of Ploiești, which was I think the most heavily contested province of the whole campaign, because there was it was really a race against time. I was trying to move my garrisons there, and the Axis just kept attacking even more. At some point I was even prone to give up, because I was like, I cannot do anything, and my troops are just being attacked, and it's really a war of attrition, and a war of attrition that I didn't seem to win at this point, which was kind of weird. But I mean, this is Black Eyes with endless of bonuses to the AI, so you never know what can happen. Yeah. And yeah, I think that was the province that I was talking about, the most heavily contested. And at this point, I even decided to bring in the Air Force and the close air support to just support and give a chance to my troops to hold the line and inflict as many casualties as possible to the enemy. And I mean, exploiting the fact that the Axis was always attacking me, let's say, by letting the Axis attack me every time allowed me to find the weak spot in the enemy lines, and the weak spot was around the provinces of Predzmil and south of the southeast of the Vistula River. And by grouping one tank division, one tank army, and the motorized army along that, let's say, kind of bridgehead, and pushing with the other tank army from the north, I again launched one of my favorite maneuver to trap all the Axis and German divisions around the Vistula River. And I think that this big pocket wiped out a significant amount of enemy divisions, because now in sheer numbers I felt that I was gaining the needed superiority to finally crush the Axis under the Soviet heel. I forgot to say that I did annex Xinjiang, so from that time I received some extra troops that I just quickly disbanded to gain some manpower and free equipment. And yeah, basically, with the collapse of the Axis around the Vistula, it was time to march towards Berlin. And once again, two big spearheads made by my tank armies, backed up by 16 motorized divisions, were enough to break through the enemy lines, surround the enemy troops, starve them out, annihilate, and liberate more and more infantry divisions for the main front line. And at this point, the Axis was basically doomed, and this was in early 1943. I think that the conditions of the Russian winter only apply in the provinces of the Soviet Union and not those outside of it, because surprisingly my troops could advance and attack in Germany even exactly in February and March of 1943. At some point I was just a bit bored of handling all of this, because I thought maybe this is just one. There is no point in wasting time in micromanaging everything, and so I just set the big final order for all of my field marshals, and well, I would say that the rest is history. And my motorized troops were just spearheading every offensive. They were marching deep into Germany. They took Berlin. They even marched southwards to cut off the Bulgarian troops. And well, with that big, I would say, spring offensive of 1943, the Great Patriotic War finally ended. And I was quite surprised at the end, because I think this turned out to be the fastest Great Patriotic War campaign I've ever fought. Now, I really thank you very much for again watching the video, supporting my channel, and stay tuned, because in the next episode I will go through with you with some interesting aspects of my next crazy challenge, which would be, as I mentioned already, trying to make the world black with a motorized Wehrmacht. So guys, stay tuned and see you soon.